hopefully I don't mess it up. Um, I see a lot of familiar faces. I see some of you who have been in my class before, and some of you that I convinced to come during third and fourth period today. So I see all of you guys. Thank you for being here. This is great. Um, my story starts way back when, before you guys were born, because you guys were like 16 and 17, and I'm twice as older than that. So my family, and some of you might relate to this, my family came from Mexico when I was at the end of second grade. So having come from Mexico, Spanish is my first language, and English is the language that I adopted. So my story begins in the beginning of third grade. So having been in the country for about, say, 6 months, maybe 9 months at the most, it was the beginning of third grade. And I don't know if some of you guys remember, but in elementary, we have a tendency to do a lot of reading groups, and we do like the read-arounds, okay? Well, in that particular day, we had a substitute. And we were sitting together all in different tables. And so in my table, I had some of my friends, and I had some of my, I don't want to say nemesis, I don't want to say enemies. I want to say those who were challenging me, okay? I won't name any names, because I'm afraid you guys are going to go to Facebook and then start looking them up. No, let's not do that. So we were sitting around, and the substitute said, okay, we're going to be reading from this book, and everyone's going to take a turn. And so I thought to myself, okay, I can do this. Having been in the country again, only for 9 months at the most, we were reading the book, and it was going to be read out loud. And so you guys all know what it feels like to be in front of your peers having to read out loud, right? So it's my turn. And the substitute says, go ahead, Maria, you read this portion of the book. And I looked at her, and I was about to start to read when I hear a voice on the right-hand side of the table. And it was John Doe, who was saying to the substitute, Mrs. So-and-so, don't call on her. She can't read. And I looked at John Doe. Yeah. And I so wanted my arm to be like plastic and reach over, right? So I gave him the dirtiest looks possible. And I looked at him, and he knew what I was saying. I didn't have to say a word, but in my mind, there was a moment where, again, I'm in third grade, and I don't know if you guys recall, but third grade, how much of this do you guys have? The ability to stop time and talk to yourself and say, you know what, Mr. John Doe? Yes, I cannot read, but I cannot read English. I can read Spanish. So in my mind, I thought to myself, the choice at the moment was, am I going to allow John Doe to tell me what I can and cannot do? So I told myself, I'm going to give it my best shot. So I did. I started to read it. I can't recall whether it was good or if it was bad, but you can only imagine, having been here only 9 months. And so we finished the read out loud. We went on to do whatever we needed to do. And so I remember throughout the day, I said to myself, I am going to prove, not just to Mr. John Doe, that I know how to read in English, because the choice at the time was, I am not going to allow him to define what I can and cannot do. And so from that moment on, I said, you know what? I'm going to learn the language as quickly as possible. I'm going to master the language as quickly as possible. And at any given moment, when I can challenge Mr. John Doe on some multiplication facts, oh, he's going to have something coming his way. And John Doe knew that I was really, really out to get him. And so every time we had those timed multiplication handouts, do you guys remember those? It was like 100 problems, and it was like a minute that you had to do as quickly as possible. Well, as quickly as you're done, I don't know what your teachers would do, but my third grade teacher would say, pencils down, raise your hand. So, as quickly as a minute was done, pencil down, my hand was up, and I'm looking for John Doe. And John Doe was still. So by the time he would look up, my hand was already up. Oh yeah. So, it continued to go on and on and on. Third grade, fourth grade, lo and behold, who's in the same class? John Doe. Fifth grade, who's in the same class? John Doe. Sixth grade, who's in the same class? John Doe. So, finally, see, you guys are all laughing because you can find that person in your own experience, because we've all been through that, okay? So, fifth grade, sixth grade, of course my reading level was already at where it should have been. And so now I'm reading at par with Mr. John Doe. And it was one of the greatest accomplishments for me to make sure that I mastered the language, that I spoke it, that I wrote it, that I read it correctly, okay? And not feel uncomfortable doing it, but I knew that there was that challenge coming from this one particular student. So my family moved from the Northern California area to Los Angeles when I was starting my freshman year in high school. Imagine that. You're coming to a new school not knowing anyone. But anyway, that's another story. We'll save it for another session. But when I moved, the last I heard, and of course I moved, I went on to USC, and now here I am at Gabrielino. But since I moved, the last thing I heard about, okay, I'll tell you his real name. You want his real name? I'm dying to say his real name. No. So the last I heard, John Doe.
He's so far away now.
He could have moved. The last I heard about John Doe is that he became a gas station attendant. And not that that is a bad profession to have. It still pays the bills, it still pays the rent, the mortgage, the car, blah, blah, blah. That's not a bad thing to do. But I used that experience with John Doe to make sure that it drove me, that it pushed me, that it drove me to places where maybe perhaps I wasn't as comfortable, but yet I kept that experience and I said to myself, I made a choice and that choice is going to be to always continue to progress. As a result of that choice, throughout my academic career and my professional career, and those of you you guys are still very young, you're going to find that you're going to come across those John Does. You may perhaps be a John Doe to someone else. Right? So I told myself, continue to propel forward, Make that right choice. Don't allow anyone, you guys listening carefully? Do not allow anyone to define what you can, what you cannot do. You define it for yourself. Okay? There's going to be those John Does out there, but you make sure that you don't become that stumbling block for anybody else. But if you see John Doe, you're going to propel forward, you're going to push forward, you're going to make the right choice, and you're going to make sure that it's going to be the best choice for you, so that one day it's going to be many, many, many good things happening for you. Thank you.